Good morning, my name is Stryker, Meyer, a Vietnam veteran, here to talk to the students from Corona Del Mar High School.
I'm from Trenton, New Jersey. My dad was a milkman, mom was a piano teacher, church organist, and when the war came along, it was just like, it was really different. But I grew up watching World War II movies, talking about the Battle of the Bulge, and learning history through the movies. There's a movie called The Longest Day.
A Vietnam veteran, and I served in Vietnam 2 tours of duty, and it was first went to Vietnam in April '68, came home April '69, went back in October of '69, stayed there till middle of April 1970. And this is an actual picture of our team on October 6, believe it or not, '68. Before we got on the helicopter to go on a mission. So this is the way our team dressed. And this is a guy named Jim Davison, and he was the team leader. Don Wolpen, I was the radio operator. That's me here. And then we worked with the South Vietnamese, and the South Vietnamese on our team were from here. He was our point man, and his name is spelled Phouc. His name is Phuc. This is Hep with the sunglasses. He is our interpreter. He spoke 4 languages, and he lives today in Houston. On the very last day at the end of the war, when Saigon fell, he was able to escape with his wife and baby. And I'll say a little more about that later. And the gentleman on the end, his name is Sal, S-A-U.
South Vietnam, it was hot all the time. And they had monsoons. When it rained in a monsoon, it rained so hard that it rained horizontally. And you could be in a room, you open a door, step outside, and before you put your foot in the ground for a 3rd step, you were completely drenched. That's just how hard it rained.
So, for just a very quick history on the Vietnam War, during World War II, the Vietnamese fought with the OSS, which was the predecessor to the CIA. And they fought against the Japanese. At the end of World War II, President Roosevelt had heard reports from Ho Chi Minh, who was the leader from North Vietnam, saying, "Hey, tell the French to stay away," because the French had ruled South Vietnam as a colony for 150 years. When the Japanese came in, you know, politics can get pretty messy, but the Japanese came in, they pushed the French out, and the Vietnamese had fought the Japanese to get them out. They wanted their country back. Training. So at the end of that in-country training, they're going to come and talk to you about a special project. Don't do it. Go to a conventional A-team, learn how things work. Of course, me and my buddies all said, okay. So we got the in-country training, and then they came out and they said, hey, we got a project, we'll look for volunteers. And so my buddy Matt goes, well, what do we volunteer for, Sarge? He said, can't tell you. If you want to volunteer, volunteer. We're leaving now. So a few of us volunteered, and that's the way we entered the secret war. From the training, we went to Da Nang, and we had a briefing. And the briefing was on like one of these, just like a scene in the movies. There's a sergeant major, and he had a map. And it was a map of South Vietnam that was clear. And then you had a map of Laos and Cambodia, had targets and numbers and all kinds of indicators, which turned out would be enemy anti-aircraft, enemy positions, locations where other teams had been lost or wiped out. And the guy goes, welcome to the secret war. And then in front of us we had papers. And the papers, he says, if you want to join the secret war, sign the paper. And what this paper says is you cannot talk about anything you do from this day forward in the secret war. You can't tell your mother, your girlfriend, anybody. If you do and we learn about it, we'll prosecute you and we'll take you to court. And you can't talk about it for 20 years. No pictures, nothing. So I write letters home to Mom. Hi Mom, the weather was really nice today in Phu Bac where we're stationed. But I couldn't talk about the secret war that we were engaged in. So that's the way we got into the secret war. The day I arrived in camp was like around May 22nd, May 23rd. I get off the helicopter a recon team, spike team, code names for recon teams or spike teams at that time. Spike Team Idaho gets on the helicopter, gets inserted into a target in the Ashall Valley, which is one of our more severe targets, in Laos. They're never heard from again. 3 days later, a team went in to try to find him. Everybody on the team was wounded. One man was killed in action. So that team was Idaho, the team that I eventually came onto, because there was an opening. Literally, the whole team just disappeared.
What was the most stressful event during the Vietnam War?
There were several, but there was one that sticks out. Like whenever we had a firefight with the enemy, that was stressful. And sometimes they would come after us. Remember, we have a 6-man recon team like this right here. They would come after us maybe with 20, 30 guys. Sometimes it would be 100. Sometimes it would be 1,000. But we had the Air Force, and we had the helicopter gunships that worked with us. And then the Air Force also had an airplane. It's called an A-1, and it's a single engine. It's a big airplane, but it carried a lot of bombs, a lot of bullets. And so, like, say if this would be the recon team, and the enemy was coming at us this way, we would get gun runs. They would come across this way with a gun run, shooting the enemy. Sometimes they use napalm, and then bombs. And so we had one mission. In fact, 2 days after this photo was taken, we had a mission where we made contact at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We got to the top of the hill, and they hit us with wave after wave, but we were in jungle, so it couldn't be like here. If we had a wave attack, you see them coming, they're really right in your face. Here in the jungle, they would come out of the jungle firing their AK-47s on full automatic. And after a while, we had killed so many people that they began to stack up the bodies. Because we were on the hill, they stacked up the bodies in the hope that they would climb on the top of their dead soldiers to get an angle to shoot down at us during this firefight. And it took a couple hours before I made radio contact with the Air Force to come help us. And they finally got there. And so in this case, we had enemy here, here, and here, and we directed airstrikes on all sides. And then at last light, a helicopter came and it hovered because there's no landing zone, but they found an open area where there's an elephant grass and small trees are about 15, 20 feet tall. This pilot was a South Vietnamese pilot. His name was Captain Tin. He came in and hovered for 10 minutes, just waiting. It took us that long to get to the helicopter. Meanwhile, I was directing gun strikes against the enemy soldiers. And then as he hovered, Don, the team leader, and I threw everybody in the team up into the helicopter. And then Don turned to me and goes, "You got to get in." I just grabbed him by his shirt because the adrenaline was pumping. I picked him up and just threw him in the helicopter. And during that time, when we had this moment of putting the team on there, I looked up at the helicopter pilot, because the helicopter pilot is higher up in the helicopter, and he looked down on the right side, and here's Captain Tin. "Okay, guys, I'm ready to go home whenever you are." He was so cool. And here's all this noise. They were shooting at us, we're shooting at them, there's gunships going by. And so that's a stressful situation.
What is the greatest psychological impact that war has had on you? Was it positive or negative?
Well, I always try to make it positive whenever I can. I was really young, like you all. I actually went to high school at one point, graduated in 1964. It took me 2 years to flunk out of college. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I went to college, fooled around, just was stupid, basically. And then back then they had a draft. And so my dad let me know that I was going to get drafted, and I was working that summer in Yosemite National Park. And the book The Green Berets came out. And by then, the Vietnam War, this is 1966, the war was beginning to get more traction, more publicity in newspapers, and we're learning about what South Vietnam was. So long story short, I enlisted, went in, did the training I told you about, and in the end, I believed in what we were doing, particularly because these guys, what they told us about the communists, and we knew it was a fact. And there's a lot of different spin put on the Vietnam War. And my view is very different from a lot of Americans that were there. Because you had these traditional guys that would go through basic, they would never talk to South Vietnamese like I did, or live with them or fight with them. And some had really bad experiences. And the Viet Cong would be in their midst. Like today, you hear about Afghanistan and Iraq, where the ISIS soldiers would go in and blow themselves up and kill other Americans. We had the same thing with Viet Cong in the traditional camps. So I grew up during the war, came to appreciate our country, and really, no matter where you've been, you come back to good old United States, it's like, wow, thank God I was born here and not somewhere else.
Was there any events in the war where you thought about the feelings of the opposition?
What do you think was the most prevalent emotion that you had during the war?
Fear. Because, you know, we would be, because it was unconventional warfare, the Vietnam War, and you had Viet Cong that lived in your midst, like they would mortar our compound at night, and sometimes they would ambush, like if we were just going to go to town to go down and get some ice cream or get a drink or two, just to take a break on Saturday or Sunday, sometimes the Viet Cong, the local guerrillas, would attack our people just on the way you're going in the town. You're not in combat, but that's what unconventional warfare is about. You just continue to hammer away, do psychological warfare, more or less. And so yeah, a lot of times when you get mortared, there's fear. You run and hide. If there's a firefight, and then sometimes the fear of the unknown, because it's really when you fly into the combat, you're at 4,000 feet, and the jungle is green, beautiful, lush, and some parts would remind me of my cousin's farms in New Jersey, where I grew up. It was Trenton, New Jersey, and my cousins had the farm, and I used to work with them during the summer. So I'd be flashing back to Belmead, New Jersey, and their farm. 10 minutes later, you're on the ground in Laos or Cambodia, and you're playing hide and go seek with guns.